Hey, good evening, everyone. Another Tuesday evening for Tuesday's Thoughts. Good to be here this evening. I'm going to make the assumption that everything is good, everything is well. I've just waited for my sound engineer just to give me a nod, as I always like, just to make sure that I'm on the ready. So, welcome to this evening's session. Um, we've been looking at the whole thing about relationships, and tonight we'll be looking at about being in a dating rut. Not particularly talking about you're dating somebody, you get on really well, but you kind of get a bit bored. But this is something about being in irregular patterns. So, my name is Delroy Hall. I'm a trained psychotherapist or a counsellor, whichever one you prefer, teacher, trainer, and consultant. And I've been doing this now for nearly April the 2024, be 4 years. Started this during lockdown. I didn't think I'd still be doing it, but here I am, still doing this. So I can't see anything at the moment. So I'm assuming that everything is. I did have some problems with Facebook during the week. They said that my account had been suspended. Anyway, no, it's there. Anyway, there you are. Thank you, Claire. Yeah, good. Listen, Matt, it's good to go. If you can hear me, we're good to go. So my name is Delroy Hall. I've been been doing these sessions now for April will be 4 years. April 24 will be 4 years. Now, I need to say right from the beginning that these sessions are not a substitute for going to see your GP or a psychotherapist or a counselor or a psychologist, seeing or a mental health practitioner, seeing people that you really need. These are just some hints and tips just to kind of get us through some difficult patches to provide understanding. Ultimately, the sessions are, for me, is to add value to people's lives. That's what I'm about, adding value to people's lives. I know that life isn't perfect. I also know that sometimes some situations are dire and they're not going to get any better. As I remember saying to a particular client quite some time ago, things were really, really bad. And I asked him one question and he just looked at me absolutely gone out. I said, what are you doing to stop things from getting worse? He'd not even thought about it. But this whole thing of that, I realize that sometimes, no matter how much counseling and input, sometimes things do not get better. But what can we do to stop making it from getting worse? So thank you, sound engineer, and thank you. Clara said, personally, these sessions are invaluable and have reached places that counsellors, therapy could never. Okay, thank you very much. That's really, really helpful. Good evening, Jenny. And if you're listening on catch up, do you know I wrote something on betrayal 4 months ago and somebody responded this morning. So you put stuff out there, and encouragement for people who are listening. Sometimes, thinking, should I start, should I not? Just do it and put the stuff out there, and you do not know who it connects with. So this evening's session will be, are you stuck in a dating rut? And the dating rut I want to speak about specifically over the next couple of weeks is, do you find yourself, or do you know some of your friends, they date and they're not short of girlfriends, not short of boyfriends, not short of partners, but they date the same person and they end up with the same outcome. I think I shared a few weeks ago, a friend of mine, he said, Delroy, regardless of the woman, African, Asian, English or Caribbean, he said, I just kept getting the same outcome. I think I was in therapy at the time, and he started to do some work on himself, and he was intentional of dating somebody who he would never normally date, and they've been together for 15 years and they got married recently. So there's something about us that keeps doing the same thing, and certainly my years as a practitioner, as a therapist, I've seen it time and time again. One of the things I'll say now, those of you that have nieces, nephews, young people who've not started the dating game yet, I say this to my daughters, listen, when you start dating, it is critical how you start, because if you don't nip bad behavior in the bud, first relationship ends, the same thing happens the third, second relationship, and then there's a cycle that begins to develop, and 10 relationships in, you're getting the same result. So dating and how we date is really, really important. So one of the things I've said to individuals, what you can do if you become aware that you are, and you can share this with your friend as well, if you become aware that you've been dating X amount of people, and this is not a judgment call on how many people you dated, this is not about that at all, but you realize there's a pattern. one of the things you can do, it takes a bit of time, it takes a bit of patience, and it takes some insight, it takes a bit of courage, that you literally, and I've shared this with individuals, you get a sheet of paper. So let's say over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, you've dated, say, 8 guys or 8 women. Sheet of paper, name on each sheet, and you write down some of the common features of the relationship. Now, you might not notice it in the first or the second, but as you begin to go through the various relationships you've had, you'll see traits begin to take place. So one of the things you can do, once you see the traits taking place, the characteristics, then one of the things you can do, you can get a list and say, right, these are the traits. Now, what can I do to avoid those type of traits? So I'm going to say a bit more about that in a moment. So you're looking for the features, the characteristics, the traits, behavior, make a list and see if there's any trends. That's what people who read the trends, they're able to predict what may happen in the future, not because they have special powers, but they see a particular trend that's going. And if it doesn't change, it's going to kind of continue. The same thing with our lives. Sometimes, lots of us, we have good patterns, and some of the patterns we have are not so good. So one of the things that you can do, the patterns are not so good, you can begin to a timeline and see how it kind of shaping out. And then you can begin to change some things if you see them heading in a direction that you're not really happy with. So one of the things that you can do, if you have enough courage and insight and you're quite reflective, is actually just sheet of paper, name of each individual at the top, look at the characteristics, what are the trends, what do you see emerging, and then what can you do then to deal with it. And sometimes it may be at that point then you go to see a therapist, you've done a lot of the work, and then you speak with a therapist and say, look, I've noticed these trends, what can I do to begin to break the trend and do something different? So that's really important. So one of the things that's very clear then is, in terms of dating, if we keep being attracted to the same individuals, one of the things, same type of individual, personality type, one of the things that we can definitely say is that attraction is beyond the physical. There's something going on that is deeper than physical attraction, even though for men, physical attraction is incredibly important. But sometimes, in fact, with men, sometimes they just date the same type of women, blonde-haired women or brown-haired women or women with a particular shape and size and those type of things. They do it all the time. You stick them in Timbuktu, the same thing happens. A woman has ended several bad relationships. She goes to a party and there's loads of people there and she meets somebody, and lo and behold, a few weeks they start seeing each other, dating, and then the whole cycle happens. So it's very clear there's something beyond the physical that is taking place that maybe we're not even aware of. So over the next couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, I'll be looking at some of this, bearing in mind that this is not quick fix. Not unless you're really intentional, and in a sense, you're almost going against how you operate naturally. Changing who we're attracted to and so forth doesn't happen overnight. It takes some time, it takes some insight from us. So if it's not physical, even though you can say, well, look, you've dated X amount of people, they don't look the same, but you end up with the same outcome. So what's kind of going on? What's going on? So one of the things that we do know now is that there's emotional cues that have early origins within us, early memories, and in our unconscious, leading to repeatedly picking the same type of individual. Gosh, in all the years I've been working as a therapist, the amount of times I've heard it that a woman or a guy will meet somebody, and well, nobody's ever random, but they meet them in places, and then sure enough, thank you for that, Saf, and sure enough, they ended up, Delroy, it was fine. So, and that's the same thing. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know why I keep falling for these guys, but I'm going to say something a little bit about that towards the end. There's almost this type of thing, birds of a feather flock together, even though you're not intentional. So the problem is that so we've had a bad relationship, 2 or 3 bad relationships, and then we say, I want to date somebody different. But invariably what happens, we end up dating the same type of personality. That's what it's about, the personality type we keep dating. And what happens, or what can happen, so we say we want to date somebody different, we meet somebody different, and this person treats us really, really well. But because we're not used to that type of relationship, what we can do, and what many people do, they self-sabotage the relationship. So the relationship is going really well, but they're not used to being looked after, treated very well. Now, of course, if you're in a relationship, you're treated badly, you, as I said before, you get the hell out of there as quickly as possible. See the red flags. But if you've been used to being treated badly, and you're now in a relationship where you've been treated really, really good, not unless you've done that work on yourself and you want to be really intentional, what can happen, and has happened in often cases, is that people self-sabotage the relationship, and then the relationship ends, and then they say to friends, "See, yeah, it was a good guy, or good woman, but you see, I told you I'm no good in relationships," and all the rest of it. So that's not helpful. I think I remember very clearly many years ago, gosh, it must be 10, 15 years ago, working with a young woman who wasn't short on relationships, but they became intimate very quickly, and met a guy who it became intimate quickly, but he said, "Look, I want to get to know you." And she said, "Delroy, I can't deal with it." So she ended the relationship. She said, I couldn't deal with somebody wanting to get to know me, wanted to know who I was, and I couldn't deal with it. So she ended the relationship. She sabotaged the relationship, ended it, and then he went back to where it was. So it's more than, it's beyond the physical. So one of the things we need to understand is this, that we are far more complex than we realize and what we give people credit for. As human beings, we are absolutely complex individuals. One of the things I will say, as much as there's counseling psychotherapy, that we have some insights from neuroscience, we have some insights now from evolutionary biology, whereby this whole dating thing is much more than just physical attraction, but it's this whole thing about reproduction, carrying on the species. Is this person good enough to be a mother? Can they procreate, propagate humanity? So all these things are going on at an unconscious level, which we're not always thinking about. So we're more complex than we realize and we give ourselves credit for. A study, I read this, a bit of a study called Consistency and Inconsistency Amongst Romantic Partners Over Time. One of the factors, so let me give you the title again, Consistency and Inconsistency Among Romantic Partners Over Time. One of the factors they say that causes to the same outcome is that to do, believe it or not, they say location. We are likely to date the same type of people because we live in a particular area. We hang out with the same type of people, the same thinking, the same community, the same village. So we're likely to be dating the same type of people, the same type of thinking, and so forth. That's one of the things that can lead to keep getting the same results. Believe it or not, that seems really strange, doesn't it? But it kind of makes sense to me. Tight religious communities, small communities whereby people really don't venture out much. I recall certainly years ago that sometimes when people went to school, if they went into town, it's like a family trip, and they would take time out of school to go into town because they live so much in the area in which they were in. And town doesn't necessarily mean 10, 15, 20 miles away. Town could literally be 3 or 4 miles away, but they never, ever go into town. So town with a family is a special trip. They just hang around the few streets in their kind of very, very small world. So part of this study suggests that the reason why we get similar results is that because we're dating people who are very similar to us, live in the same area, have the same beliefs, all that type of thing. So in a sense, we kind of have the same kind of outcomes. So Laura Berman, she has a different view. So what I'll be doing, I'll be suggesting different views. Certainly the work that I do quite often, it's to do with early experiences of life. But quite often underneath is a kind of negative sense of self. But we can go and look at that another time. So this is what she says, that the reason why we attract certain types of individuals, and I think she has a point. She said that we kind of give off energy. And one of the things that has always baffled me is that sometimes, I recall a student many years ago now, can't remember her name, the name's not important, but she'd be with friends, and it was as though everywhere she went, even with friends, she was set upon by guys. And not that there was no sexual assault, but it was just the way in which guys approached her. And one particular incident, she became really upset and then was on a park bench, and the same thing happened to a random guy. So you then wonder, what on earth is going on for people? Why? It's almost as though they're attracting the same thing. But again, I'm going to say something about that in a moment. So Laura Berman, she talks about that we have energy. So for example, it's a good example. Sometimes we are with people and they just have a positive energy around them. You feel it. But for sometimes people have negative energy and you sense it. And it's almost as though at one time it was men who just seemed to prey on women that seemed to go through difficult periods of time. Women wouldn't necessarily say what they've gone through, but it was as though they picked something up. But it's not just women having a tough time and men being prey. Women can also be prey on women, and men can be prey on men too. So the landscape is, I guess it's not changed. I guess it's always been there, but it's now more in the open. So when Laura talks about energy or the vibe, this is what she says, that when we meet somebody at an emotional level, certainly the attraction is there, but something's a bit deeper. This is what she says. We can meet somebody and after one date, we can feel as though we've known them for ages. And you can meet an individual and an individual knows they're going to marry this person over one cup of coffee. There's something that's going on that is much deeper than physical attraction. She talks about vibe, or she talks about energy. So in romantic relationships, this is a study in Toronto 2019, the researchers showed that people do have a type. And regardless of what we want to do, even if we've had several bad relationships and we intentionally say, right, I'm going to date somebody different, we end up with a similar type of personality. That's what happens. And they said they did some research, 2019, and they're saying there's more research that needs to be done to find out exactly what's going on within us. So it's a lot more than just attraction. It's a lot more just than vibes or the energy that we give off. But I think sometimes for me, it would be somebody sees a therapist, one, but also some intentional work that's done for individuals. So this is one of the things that can happen. When a relationship ends, there's a tendency to blame the other's personality. And then there's a decision to date something different. And then we end up, in reality, we're dating the similar type of individual. Yobin Parks, a psychologist, has said that's what the research has found, that we blame the individual, the person who's ended the relationship, or you've ended it, but you blame the individual for their behavior. But he said you then want to go on to somebody else, and then you end up dating pretty much the same individual. He said we tend to be attracted to people similar to ourselves. He further comments that if you're in a new relationship and this new relationship, the person has some personality types similar to the ex-relationship, you might have learned some skills in how to navigate and be in this relationship. So he said that can work positively, but he said it also can work negatively, that it doesn't come off good for you as the person. So that's something to kind of bear in mind. So a way forward, and one way forward, over the next few weeks, we're going to look at some ways forward, and I'll be finishing shortly. Please, if there's any questions or you want to comment, I just think the whole thing about attraction is absolutely fascinating. Yeah, it really is. And sometimes in fact, I recall, oh gosh, how long ago? About 8 years ago. My mother now, she's now 87, so she would have been about 80. And Mum's a bit kind of conservative in relationships, and that, she's an 80-year-old woman, so why won't she be conservative? And we were driving somewhere, and just all of a sudden, just out of the blue, she said, Delroy, there's some people you meet, you just click with them, and you could talk with them all day. And I've certainly had that experience. I know some of you may be listening. You've had that experience, and it could be that it's beyond the physical. There's something about the individual. You might not even know what it is, but you click. And you might not even have similar interests. You may have really different interests, but at a level which is not psychological, not physical, but you just connect and just there almost. I think in the world of psychology, they call it attunement. That sometimes there are people who you're not married to them, you're not dating with them, but they're a friend, but somehow it's almost though you know what's happening to them, even though they've not told you. So here's a question. In some cultures, they impose the necessity for people in their community to ensure that they choose a partner who fits in and won't rock the boat. Yes. Could this be why some people subconsciously always choose the same type of personality and it doesn't work? Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good question. And obviously there's a massive kickback now with arranged marriages over here. So that's kind of something that you are I don't know if you're alluding to that, but one of the things about arranged marriages, they're not just random people. I remember talking to an Asian guy some time ago. He said, look, we don't just pick anybody, He says, our families have known the family for 2 or 3 generations. So we kind of know the stock. So the arranged marriage is based on, what do I know about this family? I did a lecture a few years ago, in fact, many years ago now, I would say well over 20 years ago. And I made a comment that there were some families that you should never engage with. And I was told I shouldn't have said it. Well, actually, the fact of the matter is it's true. So there's some dynamics in some families you don't want to get involved in. You really, really don't want to get involved in. So in some cultures, they impose a necessity for people in their community to ensure, yes, that they don't choose a person who fits in and won't rock the boat. Yes, could this be why some people unconsciously always choose the same type of personality and it doesn't work? Absolutely. One of the things, of course, is individuality. We're all different. And just because somebody is of a particular culture or group doesn't mean to say they fit in all spheres. So let me give you an example. I do training on inclusive leadership, and we were talking about cultures and the assumptions that we make. So I made a comment, and this is true. This happened to me, I think it was last year or the year before in Sheffield, in the middle of town, summer, and I heard this really loud, heavy reggae music. Back in the day, it was called dub. Lots of bass line and drums. And I remember thinking, God, who's making that? What black guy's making all that racket? And round the corner comes this guy. He must have been in his late 70s, early 80s, on his motorized, oh gosh, I can't remember. Anyway, it's motorized. Anyway, his motorized wheelchair. And it was him. And he had a massive external speaker. And he was really pumping out this heavy reggae music. And it wasn't just a track, because I saw him sometime later, the same type of music. And this guy's in his late 70s. So, so even though cultures are there, sometimes people don't always fit. So it's really important. So I think you're right. It's about not rocking the boat, keeping everything same. But then, of course, that if you then have somebody who's a bit of a free thinker, the danger, of course, is that we did a session some time ago about authentic self. The danger, of course, then you suppress the individual, and then that leads to a whole heap of problems. So, yeah, that can be something to keep the society safe and secure, not to rock the boat. Yeah, it can go on. Yeah, it can go on. There's lots more I could say on that. So this is just a way forward. One way forward. I'll be doing more over the next few weeks. Tony Robbins, and I think he's right, whether or not you agree with his ideas and all the rest of it, but I think he really, please, Jenny, if I've not answered the question, please come back to me. And anyone else, if you're there listening in, pose a question, pop it online, or if not, you can DM me during the week, that's fine too. So Tony Robbins, a kind of self-help gurus, asked this: if you want to live a great life, he said, ask great questions. So, and then we ask great questions by asking questions repeatedly and then looking at ways of actually implementing them. Now, this is what Laura Berman has said, and I think she's right. Women or men keep asking themselves. So she uses the example of women, as women asking themselves, why do I always fall for bad boys? Now, I'll just say something about bad boys. And I realize what I'm making is a bit of a generalization, but bear with me. sometimes all bad boys have got is lyrics and swagger. And if you can get behind the lyrics and swagger, there's nothing there. There's not there, mate. There's nothing there. All they've got is the swagger. They've got the lyrics and how to talk to the woman and blah, 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 blah. And but then if you stay long enough, there's nothing there or very little there. So she says, instead of asking, why do I always fall for bad boys? A better question is, why do I keep attracting bad boys into my life? She said, that's a far better question, and it is. So the first question is, why do I always fall for bad boys? The first question is my fault. It's negative. Question number two is, a better question is, why do I keep attracting bad boys into my life? Is my responsibility. There's something about me that I'm doing that's attracting the same type of individual. What is it? This is not about blaming, self-blaming, beating yourself up, being disparaging towards yourself. It is about, what am I doing that's allowing this to happen? I hope that makes some sense. Oh, let's have a look. Oh my goodness, I was always down for bad boys. The biggest thing I had to overcome. Yeah, I think if I'm correct with bad boys, all they've got are lyrics, but bit of swagger. They know, they know the moves, and they're chatty, and they know how to win the women or men. We're living in the real world, so we do know that heterosexuals are not just heterosexual relationship, not just the only relationship. Yeah, so they've got the swagger, but then if you can get behind that, quite often, very little there, very little there. And the minute you see that, women, go on your bike, be gone. I hope that's not talking too hard or saying anything that's too hard. Yeah, so first question is my fault. Second question is my responsibility. We do a lot better if we take something as our responsibility as opposed to my fault. So that is our session for this evening. The first session of, stuck in a dating rut. The dating rut is, there's loads of dating ruts. Being with somebody, you actually really enjoy being with the company, but the relationship's gone a bit sticky, gone a bit stuck. It's not to say you should end the relationship, but you need to be doing something else. I'll say to individuals, listen, there's more to dating than just going to the pictures and having food. Be creative, do things together. So a friend of mine said some time ago that she had a friend down south who dated somebody for 3 or 4 years, and they never did anything ordinary. They always did big things, and most of life is ordinary. So cooking, washing, cleaning, ordinary stuff, boring stuff. Even do that on dating. It's not just about exciting stuff, because actually, if you're going to be together forever, that's boring stuff that's going to occupy most of the time. So I hope that has been helpful. Yeah, Claire, I tried to do real talk here. Somebody said, look, you kind of tackle things that people don't want to talk about. The fact is, maybe people might not want to talk about it, but I know that it's happening in people's lives. And the quicker we get to talk about stuff and bring it to the surface, then we're able to deal with it. But whilst we're in denial, we won't admit to what's happening. Our lives remain the same, and nothing changes. Nothing changes at all. So listen, I'll see you all next week. Christmas is coming soon. Next week will be December the 5th. So Boxing Day will be, I think, Tuesday. I'll have something on. I don't think I'll be live. We're recording, but we'll certainly have something. And I may have a Christmas special before Christmas. Anyway, go well, take care, enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your week. Thank you for your comments and just being here. And if you're watching this later on, thank you very much indeed. If you're watching it silently and you're taking notes, I hope you found this session helpful. Speak to you soon, take care, and wish you well. Bye now.